Hey guys, Psychopathic Poro here, and today I am going to be doing the LPL 2025 Winter Split Power Rankings. My voice might sound a little bit tired, that's because we just got done with day 2 of the Freljord Fluff Tourney, so I've been speaking all day, my throat is tired, my tongue is tired. Unfortunately, there's not really another time for me to do this tier list because LPL is starting at 4 in the morning, so in 8 hours. I have 8 hours to record this, trim it, post it, and then go to sleep. Yeah. Sadly, I didn't really have time to get this video out earlier. The rosters have been very sketchy. We didn't actually have the finished rosters until a few days ago, and I've been absolutely swamped with trying to edit like 5 different videos, so this one's coming out a little bit slower, but here we are, 16 teams for the LPL this year. And without further ado, let's just get right into it. In 16th, I have Ultra Prime. They're sporting Wonjong, Junhao, Saber, Wako, and Rosie Love. Do you ever just look at a team's player card and it looks completely doomed? That's kind of how I feel when I look at Ultra Prime. Ultra Prime has always been a bottom tier team, and the swaps that they made are not promising swaps. Junhao coming from BLG's Academy team, and then Wako and Wonjong coming from Frank Esports. I have heard some people being somewhat excited about Wonjong, but the only thing I would say in response to that is that the best top laner that we have seen out of the PCS in recent history by a wide margin has been Solo Kill. Solo Kill was touted as the next PCS top laner to break into the LPL and maybe be good, maybe be strong. He completely flopped. He basically got that 1 year and now he's out of the league. I'm very doubtful that there is a PCS top laner who can hang in the LPL. I think Wako's a decent player, but I don't agree with Ultra Prime trying to pick him up. Wako at this point, I mean, he's got to be like, what, 26, 27 years old? That is to say, he's not getting any stronger, he's not getting any better. While he's a solid level AD carry for PCS standards, I think maybe he could even hold his own in leagues like the LEC and the LTA North. He is not going to be a strong pickup for an LPL team. I would say that Wako is worse than Doggo in pretty much every single conceivable way. And even Doggo was an AD carry who struggled hard in the LPL. I think there's a chance that Ultra Prime could maybe go as far as 12th if they're all absolutely on fire for some reason. But I would be pretty surprised to see this team succeed. In 15th, I have RNG. This team is basically the definition of Milky Way in Elo Hell, sadly. For those of you who don't know, I am a big fan of Milky Way. He won Rookie of the Year last year, or was it Rookie of the Split? I don't remember which one. Basically, Milky Way was insanely good, probably had the best rookie split we have ever seen in the history of the game. That may sound like an exaggeration, I promise you it is not. Milky Way is a player who has potential to be one of the best junglers in the entire world. However, seeing this RNG roster is kind of a slap in the face. Somehow, Tang Yuan manages to keep his job. I don't know how he does it. I don't know what kind of dirt he has on the RNG management. But here he is. He's going to be here for yet another split. Xiaoshu's coming from Rare Atom. I actually don't think Xiaoshu is that bad. But the bot lane, Jiachi from Top Esports Academy and Lele from FPX Academy, just not a promising bot duo at all. We saw this team in Demacia Cup and it went pretty much exactly how you would expect. This team sucked big time. Pretty much the only player who showed any flashes of life was Milky Way. He had one Lilia game that didn't look terrible. I would be pretty close to saying this team is just dead last, if not for the fact that I think Milky Way will be able to bullshit a random game here and there. In 14th, I've got FPX. Now, according to my sources, I'm pretty sure that Shadow will actually be the starter for the team, but they play with Sorrow in Demacia Cup, and frankly, I don't really think it matters. Regardless of who they start, this is where I was going to put FPX anyway. Kerr is coming back from FPX last year, and in my opinion, he was the weakest link on that team. I've always held the opinion that Kerr is a bottom 2, bottom 3 level mid laner in this league. I understand why he was able to keep his spot. He pulled together a decent season with Milky Way last year, but mechanically this guy just does not have it. I have never seen a pro player miss so many flash anti-Rs before. After watching Bad and Joy play together, I have to say that I think they are both disgusting inters. Like, it just feels like they're the type of players to want to go for bad play after bad play after bad play over and over again. And while they do have one promising pickup in Sheer in the top lane, Sheer did end up getting replaced by Flandre for the majority of Summer Split, and I don't think he's going to be good enough to elevate this team out of the first stage of Winter Split. I don't know if I like the fact that JDG let Sheer go. I think that Sheer was young and promising and maybe deserved another split or two on a top team. So it's sad to see him here, but it is what it is. In 13th, I have OMG. This roster did not do very good last split, and their changes are not looking promising. PP God for Moham is a massive, massive downgrade in my eyes. I think PP God is a great player, and Moham is a player who I don't even think is at LCK level at all. To keeping Starry, I thought Starry was okay at best. Changing Angel to Linfun is most likely a downgrade. And while Heng and Harry are both pretty good players in my opinion, I don't think they have what it takes to carry this bot side. We saw that Harry was definitively outclassed by other top laners like Ale, and while Heng has been on different promising rosters over the years, he has never managed to put it together into a winning season, and I don't expect him to start doing that now. Also, I have a personal vendetta against this team. Any team who is willing to sign Abel and then not play him is on my hit list. In 12th, I've got LGD. They're running Saucy, Climber, XQW, Xiaoye, and YCX. On paper, this roster does not look good. Apart from Xiaoye, the other 4 players are up-and-coming players from Academy. I expect them to have a lot of growing pains, and I don't think that they'll do well this first split. However, if I had to give this team one compliment that sets them ahead of the 4 teams that I placed behind them, it's that they didn't look completely dogshit in Demacia Cup. Don't get me wrong, they looked pretty mediocre, but it definitely could have been worse. I think the best praise I could give for this team for this split specifically is that Climber looked pretty solid. But other than that, I just think it's a little bit too early for this team. I would even be surprised if they're anything worthwhile in spring and summer. Finally, starting to move out of the bottom dweller tiers, I have WE in 11th. This team decided to grab Karis from Bro and Taeyun from KDF. Both of those players are okay. I don't expect either of them to be amazing, but I also don't expect either of them to be terrible in their roles. I do expect Vampire to be pretty terrible in his role. Vampire is one of those supports who manages to ruin every single team he's on. Kind of in the same vein to Southwind or Baolan. If you see them on a team, you know it's doomed. You know that somehow the team is just going to fail. However, this team does have 2 players that I think will be good. Those are Cube and Tianzhen. Admittedly, Tianzhen has had his struggles. For a while, he was a little bit of a Rengar Rel 2-trick, and then Rel Jungle got axed from the entire game, so he can only play Rengar now. However, he's clearly mechanically talented, and I'm excited to see what he'll be able to do on a starting lineup instead of just playing second fiddle and only getting partial time. And then Cube is a top laner who I still think is really good. A few years ago, he was extremely dominant on a rare Atom roster that managed to place, I believe, 5th. And ever since then, while he has been kind of on and off in the league, I still have a lot of respect for him. I view him as a player who is consistently always pretty good, and definitely serves as a wall, where if the enemy top laner isn't good enough player, they will not be able to beat Cube in lane, and they will not be able to find any kind of meaningful advantage against him. Those 2 players really single-handedly bring this roster out of that bottom 5 for me. We'll have to see though, there's totally a chance that Karis, Taeyun, and Vampire can drag the team down. Again, I really want to apologize. I feel like there is more I could be saying about these teams and players, but I am really tired, my mouth is really tired, I just kind of want to get this recording over with. In 10th, I've got EDG. Their top jungle has been playing together for a while now. ZDZ and Zhaohao have followed each other from their last couple of teams. They're a good pairing, they're solid, they're definitely not top tier or anything, but they're good enough to be in the league. Angel, Assam, and Wink are also solid players in their roles. I must admit, I'm not as high on Assam as other people are, and there are a few question marks around Angel because his last split in summer was not the most impressive. But I have a lot of faith in Wink. I think Wink will be good for sure. And their baseline floor should be high enough to escape the bottom tiers. Next, this placement might be a little bit low for some people, but in 9th I have LNG. For me, this roster did a whole lot of downgrading. They replaced Scout with Haichao. Admittedly, Haichao was decent, but personally, I place a lot of Haichao's success on Meteor. I think that Meteor is still a pretty strong jungler. I thought Meteor was the driving force behind a lot of LGD's success as a whole, and they replaced their bot duo with the NIP duo, Photic and Zhuo. I feel like these 2 were promising at one point, but with every passing split, they just seem to be getting worse and worse, and I'm honestly starting to lose faith in them. That said, they kept Zika and Weiwei. Zika's a player who is definitely one of the best top laners in the league right now. And Weiwei has potential to be top 5 jungler if he's playing on his game. Back before BLG was actually good, Weiwei was making a clear case for top 5 jungler. Some people have been questioning how good he was last year though, so I totally get why people might be skeptical of him. However, there's a chance that this roster is better than I think it is. If Haichao can look promising without Meteor, and if Photic and Zhuo can return to what they looked like in their V5 days, this team could be a real threat and could definitely make top 6, top 5. In 8th, I've got Weibo. This team made 2 changes, and I don't know if I'm really a fan of either of them. They swapped Crisp for Hong. Hong has had stretches of time where he seemed good, but in recent memory, not so much. And Tian, while definitely a good jungler, in my opinion is a clear downgrade from Tarzan. For some people, 8th might be a little bit too low. I've seen other lists put Weibo as high as like 4th, but the real deciding factor for me is that I was not impressed with how this team played in the Demacia Cup. If I was to be definitively wrong about one team, I would guess it would be this one, but they're definitely in a position where I was never too inspired by their performances last year, even though they made a deep Worlds run, and I don't like any of their roster changes. In contrast to Weibo, I have my 7th place team, TT, who did manage to make a splash in the Demacia Cup, finishing top 4. They're keeping 4 of their players, and they're swapping out UCal for Setab. Now, I must admit, in my opinion, I think that UCal for Setab is a downgrade, but this team has a few unique advantages. The core of this team has been playing together for a while, so they have a lot of built-up synergy. It feels like they're a team that always has promise and can never quite deliver, but in my opinion, they keep on getting slightly more impressive year after year. And the other big piece for this team is 1xN, who I think is insanely good. This might be a bold claim, but mechanically, I think he might be the best ADC in the entire LPL. With a year under his belt, I'll be excited to see if he improves at all. And if he does, TT will be a dangerous team for anyone. I was looking at the groups for Winter Split, and I actually think TT has a pretty strong chance of making it out of their group. They beat LNG pretty convincingly in the Demacia Cup. I wouldn't be too surprised if they can do it again. In 6th, I have JDG, and while this team may look like a super team on surface level, I have a lot of doubts about it. Shun, Scout, and Missing are obviously elite players in their roles in this region, but I'm thinking this is probably the type of team where Pays will finally be exposed. I have not been a fan of Pays ever since he joined the league. I think he was carried a lot by how dominant Gen G's players were, and while this team also has some insanely good players, Ale and Scout are not keen in Chovy. Scout has put up some impressive performances in recent memory that could be on par with Chovy, but overall I would say that Ale and Scout are significantly less consistent solo laners. This means there'll be more onus on Pays to actually carry the game, and that's not something I ever thought he was particularly good at. Even when Gen G would feed him insane amounts of kills, I'm remembering a 28 kill Kalista performance at MSI, it felt like even then Pays still would struggle to close out games. Also, this is a super team that has 5 players who all came from different teams, and as we've seen time and time again historically, these pretty much always fail. Scout and Missing, obviously very dominant players, and Ale just came from a team where he likely had a huge voice in the direction that the team was taking. I would be surprised if all 5 of these players could synergize perfectly, and even if they do, I'm not convinced that Pays and Ale are good enough to contest for those top LPL spots. In 5th, I've got NIP, and this is a team that looks really exciting to watch. Shanji, Aki, Duembi, Leave, PP God. The big signing, obviously, is rookie for Duembi. Now, I know that people have had their ups and downs on Duembi, but I want to set the record straight here. Duembi may not have played in a while, but the last times that he played, he was insanely good still. A lot of people may remember him for his underwhelming 2021 Worlds appearance, but what many don't know is that in 2021 summer in the LPL domestically, he put up one of the most dominant single-player performances we have ever seen. Similarly, on LNG in 2022, he didn't manage to make Worlds, but he still looked like an elite-level mid laner. Duembi may be a bit rusty, he might have taken off too much time, but I have faith that after a few games, he'll be right back to his old self, and said old self still has the potential to be the best mid laner in the LPL. Leave and PP God are going to make a great duo. Leave is an ADC that has always been really promising. Maybe didn't look the best last year, but now that he has a lot of veteran talent around him, and a non-dysfunctional organization, I think this could be his breakout year. PP God and Shanji are both extremely strong players in their roles. I don't think either of them will be contesting a spot for best in their role anytime soon, but I also think both of these are the type of players who will be in the LPL for the long foreseeable future. The only player who I'm not quite sure about on this roster is Aki. I feel like Aki has always been a little bit too inconsistent for me. Even on the OMG roster, which was one of my favorite rosters of all time, Aki was the one player who I was never a super big fan of. I feel like sometimes he gets engaged syndrome, where he'll just go in without thinking about whether his team can follow up or not. But that said, he's clearly very mechanically talented, and the pieces around him are good enough that I'm not too worried. In 4th, I've got the legendary IG roster. They're bringing back The Shy and Rookie from 2018. They also have some really big signings like JJ, Gala, and Mako. And personally, apart from The Shy, I think the other 4 players are all close to or still at their primes. People may not know this because it's been a while since Rookie's been to an international tournament, but he's still managed to maintain his insane form after all of these years. Gala, of course, one of the most hyped up ADCs from the LPL ever. Same thing with Mako. I think everybody knows how good Mako is. And while I had my doubts about JJ after the clusterfuck that was EDG last year, he still looked very impressive at Demacia Cup. I don't think he's lost too much of the skill that he once had. The Shy is really the big question mark for this roster. He had a really impressive semifinals in Worlds 2023, But apart from that, he's kind of a griefer. I think if there was one person who was going to hold his team back, it would be the Shy. Even if the Shy was on form though, I think the final 3 remaining teams are insane enough that I'm not even convinced IG would be able to place higher than 4th anyway. In 3rd, I've got Top Esports, and this roster is looking pretty insane. They're keeping 369, Cream, and Jackie Love from their double 2nd place finishes in 2024. They're replacing Mako with Crisp, which in my opinion is a downgrade. But in response, they're changing Tien for Kanavi, which I think is a massive upgrade. Once again, I don't think that Tien is a bad jungler. I think he's pretty good. But Kanavi is a jungler who you just can't beat in the LPL. I would go as far as to say that I think that all 16 of these teams would pick up Kanavi if they had the ability to do so. 369, obviously, one of the great LPL top laners at this point. One of the best weak siders of all time. Cream and Jackie Love, 2 mechanically talented players who, when they're on form, look unstoppable. And Crisp, who I do say it's a downgrade, but he's not that bad. Definitely doesn't look nearly as good now as he did back in 2021. But just looking at this roster, I can't see myself ever putting them any lower. I think overall they're going to look stronger than they did last year. In 2nd, and I think this is going to be a pretty big surprise to people who don't follow the LPL normally, I have AL. Last year this team had Ale and Krakow, and they managed to put together some deep, very promising runs. They've changed out Ale and Krakow for Flandre and Tarzan. Krakow for Tarzan is a clear upgrade. While Tarzan may have had an underwhelming Worlds performance 2 years ago, it's definitely clear that domestically at least, he's been top of the table for sure. And Flandre, while people have a lot of question marks around him, I think that his strengths fit really, really well with this team. Flandre is a really flexible player, and he has a very deep champion pool. He definitely makes a lot of mistakes in game, but he's a high upside, versatile player. I guess the biggest question mark surrounding this roster would be their bot lane, Hope and Kyle. At face value, neither of these players are the type of players who you think would be on a top team. However, in my opinion, this bot lane is the perfect type of bot lane to put on a team like this. When you're running players like Flandre, Tarzan, and Shanks, the thing that you want most from your bot lane is consistency. Hope may not be the best AD carry out there, but he is consistent. I would say that apart from maybe Light, I can't think of an ADC that would fit better on this team. But at the end of the day, this team has 2 key pieces that I think really puts it above the rest. The first is their mid laner, Shanks. People who have watched the channel for a while know that I have rated Shanks very highly for a very long time. There are many splits in the past few years where I would have told you that Shanks was a top 3 mid laner in the LPL. Would anybody else agree with me? Probably not, but that was always my opinion. I'm excited to see if Shanks can finally prove how insane he is to the rest of the world. His champion pool is deep, his mechanics are insane, his decision making is really good. And I also feel like Shanks is one of those players who just has that extra X factor to him. The other big piece for this team is of course their head coach, Tabe. And I attribute a lot of AL's rise to Tabe joining. When he left BLG and joined AL's macro significantly improved almost overnight. This may be naive, but I also think a coach like Tabe will be really good for a player like Flandre. And overall, I just have a lot of faith in the guy. Historically, every team that he's ever joined has turned into a significantly better version of what they were before, and I think this AL team will be no exception. Also, small little side note, AL did manage to win the entire Demacia Cup. They beat Top Esports 3-1 in finals. Even if I did think that Top Esports roster looks a little bit more insane on paper, I feel really weird about putting Top Esports ahead of AL when we watched AL beat them in a best of 5. It's kind of a similar situation to how I put Poro over DK in the LCK, because Bro managed to beat DK 4-1 over the course of the Kespa Cup. But with all of that out of the way, I think that there is one team that everybody can agree is the number 1 team, and that is BLG. They're keeping all 5 of their players. Technically, they're swapping Shun for Wei, but Wei played with BLG for the entirety of summer and summer playoffs. This team is the team to beat for sure. Bin and Knight, strong arguments for best players in their roles in the league. Elk and On have had flashes of being the best bot duo in the league. And when Wei joined their roster, a lot of the issues that they had seemed to be fixed. I think that Wei's a really good fit for this team. There's really not much else to say. This BLG team has been front and center for the last 2 years or so. I think everybody knows what they can be capable of, and I don't think this team shows any signs of imploding anytime soon. Once again, I have to stress, I do wish that there were more I could say on these teams and players. However, my mouth and my brain are just way too tired for this. Honestly, I blame Doinb. It's all Doinb's fault. If Doinb didn't take so long to sign with NIP, I could have made this video weeks ago. But with that, I will be signing off. I have to get this video posted in the next few hours. And after this, there's only one region left. There is just the LCP, which I plan to cover next week. I'll see you all next time. Bye.